Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is That's So Fucked Up, a podcast about cults, murder, and other generally fucked up stuff. We're your hosts. I'm Ashley Richards.
And I'm Michelle Mosier.
And we are so incredibly honored to have today's guest with us. Charlotte Laws is an author, TV personality, public speaker, animal rights activist, actress, politician, cover girl, stand-up comic. I could literally go on, but it would take me days. And probably what you might know her from right now is the Netflix docuseries, The Most Hated Man on the Internet. Very aptly named. And a lot of you will remember Charlotte Laws as Danielle's mother and the one who kind of kicked off this whole thing.
Kayla's mother.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I was like, I knew I messed that up right after I said that. I was like, I'm so sorry. You helped so many women. It's like hard to keep track of. So, right. Let me take that back a little bit. So you will all know Charlotte as Kayla's mother and the brave woman who decided to take on Hunter Moore, who at the time was, hated on the internet, but also widely loved by a really kind of gross group of people that I don't even know how to describe. But we will definitely get into all of the advocacy work that she has done since then. Also the fact that, let's just throw in that, Los Angeles Animal Humanitarian Award, and you literally helped the lives of countless women. But that's enough from me. Let's get into your story. First, I wanted to ask if there was anything that you felt like the documentary left out that you wanted to say.
Well, there were things that they left out, and I was surprised they left out. But they're just things like the fact that a stalker showed up at my house, and I confronted the stalker, and so that was a huge drama, and I'm very surprised that was left out. And then there was a time that I dressed up incognito to go down to Long Beach, where Hunter Moore was doing a DJ gig, and I put on sunglasses and a black wig and this really kooky looking outfit and didn't look anything like myself, and came face to face with him, and he did not recognize me. That entire story is not in there. So there's definitely some memorable parts of the story that were not included. And there were, also people who didn't want to be in the documentary. And when certain victims or certain individuals said they didn't want to be in it, the director and producer decided to just exclude everything related to them, since they didn't want to be in. So there were some memorable things that were left out, but I thought they did an excellent job on it. I mean, they had a limited amount of time. I guess they wanted to keep it to 3 episodes, and, so they had to fit in what they could fit in, I suppose. But I think they did a really good job.
Wow. Yeah, it was, the whole story of it was just, I mean, even the tidbits that we got were kind of insane. So to hear that there were even more insane things that happened that weren't in it is a little baffling. Do you feel like overall you were pretty fairly portrayed as like your portion of what went into it, and how like Netflix portrayed you?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it's pretty accurate as far as that portrayal. Yeah, I thought they did a good job.
I don't know about you, Ash. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the stalker and like what happened and how that all went down.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because that kind of connects to one of our questions. Is in the documentary, you're like, they're starting to send letters and calls and insanely scary, threatening messages like, we're going to rape you, we're going to kill you. Obviously, you had a stalker. And in the documentary, you seemed very not too worried about it. Were you pretty scared at any point, or how were you?
I was concerned about it. Honestly, I was probably more concerned. I was concerned for my human family, but I was probably more concerned for my non-human family because I have dogs and I also had a bunch of chickens. I still have chickens. And I just feel they're the most vulnerable beings on the property. You could kill chickens and no one would even care. It wouldn't be against the law. So I was very nervous about their lives. And that's one of the main reasons I got the locks for the gates. And I felt like I couldn't leave the house because I felt like I had to kind of guard everybody. So it was hard for me to even like go in the car somewhere because I thought I got to stay here to make sure nothing happens and that everybody's safe.
Oh man, I would be terrified. Like if something like topples over in the other room, I'm spooked for the next couple hours. So tell me more, like when you say a stalker showed up at your house, I'm guessing this was when Hunter Moore was kind of sending people after you and he was kind of a vigilante from that group, or what?
It was like a year into it, and he had already taken his site down, and he now believed, as did I, that the FBI investigation had been dropped. We all thought it had been dropped, and so then he came out and said he was going to just get a new domain. He was going to put up all the same pictures, except he was going to add home addresses for the victims and driving directions on how to get to their houses. And then I put his home address on Twitter. And so I got lots and lots of backlash because of that. And it was right after that when the stalker showed up, which I believe he was trying to hack into our computer network. Because I'd been warned that a person would need to be near the house if they were going to hack in. And this guy had been there the previous evening. I hadn't seen him, but Kayla had seen him sitting in a car out in front. And the second night she goes, "Mom, that car's out there again." And I was so pissed off at this point. So I just marched out there, and my daughter was running behind going, "Mom, what are you going to do? Mom, what are you going to do?" And I marched up and I said, "May I help you?" And this kid, like 20 to 30-year-old kid, blonde curly hair, he was doing something in his lap. He looks up, he sees me, he freaks out. He starts the car, he zooms away. He almost hits our neighbor's wall. And I have to assume he was up to bad intention, because otherwise, if he was like, he would have said, "Oh, I'm waiting for your neighbor," or, he wouldn't have like freaked out and zoomed away. It seemed like pretty obvious to me. So anyway, so that was kind of the stalker story. So nothing ever, he didn't come in the house or anything, but there was some guy sitting in a white car outside of our house. And I got like 5 digits of his license plate.
Oh my gosh. And can you tell us more about dressing up and confronting Hunter Moore? Like when did that happen in the story? And like, what were you trying to do? And
that was probably, it was probably only not too far in, maybe a month in, or I'm not quite sure how long it had been, but there were victims that were trying, his site was still up, and victims were trying to get their pictures removed. And so they were trying to serve him with legal papers. And one of the victims had served him at a club in Northern California where he was DJing. And he just ripped up the papers into pieces and threw them all over the place. And then he claimed that he was never served at all. So she wanted me to go as a witness. So when the process server gave him papers, that I'd be a witness to him being served. And so I knew he already knew what I looked like. So I put on this crazy outfit, this pasty white makeup, sunglasses, this beatnik beret, black wig, tacky velvet jacket, like crazy, like 1960s flower power pants or something. I looked really ridiculous. And I went down there, and it was this huge parking lot with tons and tons of cars. And I get out, I lock the door, I turn around, and he's standing right there looking at me. It was so coincidental, but he didn't recognize me. And he was with 3 other guys, and they just walked on their way and went and got in some van. And so then I went into where he was having this party or whatever it was. He was being a DJ, and it was this huge, it was like a motel really, because it was all outdoors, but they had all these spots around this huge property where there were bands and there were different rooms for different entertainment. And he had this one room, and he didn't even have very many people in the room, which surprised me because he was so popular on Twitter. I was surprised there were so few people in his room. So I was watching, and he started playing the songs as DJ from his computer. But stupidly, what he did is he had a cup of beer and he threw it straight into the air right at the beginning, and it went all over his computer. And so the entire time it's like sputtering and the music is stopping and going. I mean, it's like hilarious. It was so dumb, you know. And then I waited and waited, and the process server didn't show. And I finally went in the hallway and I called the victim and I said, "Where's the process server?" And she says, "I decided not to do it. I don't know, but he might do something against me. I'm too scared. I don't want to serve him papers." Everybody was so scared of him. And so I went all the way down there, and she never served the papers. And then one of his friends kind of started like looking at me weird, and I decided I better get out of there. And he kind of followed me like halfway to my car and was kind of watching me in the distance. So I don't know if he recognized me or not, but it was, you know, I got out of there.
Oh my gosh. Or he was just like, that is the strangest looking woman I've ever seen in my life.
I know.
What is
Well,
she
you know
doing
what?
here?
You know what was the weirdest thing is 2 guys tried to pick me up. I looked horrible, and I gave them lectures. These were like 20-year-olds. I said, "I am old enough to be your mother. What is the matter with you? I am so ugly. You are crazy." You know, that's like lecturing them. It was so funny.
All right.
Like,
Well,
you're not
Charlotte,
ugly.
Charlotte,
I would
offline.
love that.
Yeah, offline, I'm going to ask you for your secret powers of persuasion if you can pick up men in that kind of a getup, because
I think
sounds
they were
like
really drunk or on drugs or something. That's what I think. I'm pretty sure of that, actually.
It sounds like a lot of that was going on for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, you're just my hero.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Well, that kind of leads us into as well. You know, I think we didn't get to hear as much of the tea as we wanted to in the documentary. Can you tell us more about your party crashing days? Like, girl, you are wild in so many ways. You are just like, I am somebody who just kind of like, me and Michelle are both just full of anxiety, and fear just kind of like runs my life. And you just go and look these situations in the face, and you're like, fuck it, YOLO. Like, you're just, it's
well,
amazing.
I mean, it's really not that hard to do. There's kind of always a way in. And you do have to kind of be confident in yourself, and there are various ploys you can use. But I started doing it when I was maybe 17 years old. And when I was that young, it was more just for fun. And my friends were going out to the bar or going bowling. And I'd be like, no, I think I'll hang out with the president or Lee Iacocca or Michael Jackson or whatever. You know, I mean, who wants to go to the bar? I didn't even drink. I've never had a glass of alcohol in my whole life. So I wasn't interested in what my friends were doing. And so I realized it was, you know, really fun. It was exciting. I felt like I was meeting accomplished people, and maybe I could learn something from them. And I was making good connections. And also the show business is kind of like one big family. And so they were very accepting of me. And I really liked that because I had a horrible childhood with a very racist, snobby society and family. And I was raised by adoptive parents, and my adoptive mom committed suicide. My dad was verbally abusive, and my brother was killed in a car accident. And I just wanted to escape. I was always the black sheep of the community. It was a very wealthy community, old money, you know, new money was inferior, of course. And so I just wanted to get away. And show business was a way to get away. And they were considered inferior people. You know, high class Atlanta doesn't like show business people, of course. And so it started out as a hobby. And then as I got older, I realized it was a great way to push for legislation, to get FaceTime with presidents and senators, to get people signed on to charities, to get interviews for my book, you know, to get real estate clients, to sell my beaded clothes, because I used to design beaded clothes. I mean, I realized that there were a lot of benefits to being at these extremely, you know, fancy events with very wealthy people. Some of these fundraisers are $50,000, $100,000 per person, which is more than the equity in my house. So it's like, how do I get FaceTime with a president or a senator? You crash. That's the only way to get in, because I don't have the kind of money to have that, you know, to persuade them towards a certain kind of legislation or something that I might want to advocate for. So I realized there are just a lot of benefits to it. I don't do it very often anymore. There has to be a reason like that, you know, but And the fun part really was the crashing. I mean, sometimes I'd get in and I'd be like, well, I'm in. Now I might as well go home. It's like the crashing was the challenge. Being inside is not always that much fun anyway. It just depended.
It's the journey, not the destination.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand. Would you just kind of like figure out what these people dress like and how they act, and then just kind of like when the security guard's not looking, like slip through the rope and just be like, hey, what's up? Like,
It really kind of depends. I mean, sometimes you dress outlandish and you pretend to be part of the entertainment. Sometimes you might wear black and pretend to be part of an orchestra if they have some kind of orchestra event. Other times you get a press pass, you make up a fake agency or whatever, a fake, press outfit, and then you get, a press pass to get in. Other times you just go through the kitchen or some sneaky way to get into the room. Sometimes you literally just jump next to a celebrity and start talking to them and you waltz right in with them. I mean, there are lots of different ways to get in, and it kind of just depends on the situation. And you have to kind of scope it out and figure it out. I mean, there were times I'd go to a venue in advance and say, okay, I'd go in, I'd pretend to be with the entertainer. I'd say, oh yes, I'm with the, blah, 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 whatever the entertainer was. I'd show up early. I say, we need to check out the dressing room. We need to see the backstage. Oh yes, ma'am. They show you around and everything. And then, you write down the phone number in the dressing room in case you might need it. You get all this information, and then it makes it easier when you're ready to crash.
Oh my gosh, you may be the coolest person I've ever talked to.
I was just gonna say, like, you just become more and more of my hero, like every minute that you speak. I'm like fangirling so hard.
So Charlotte, have you ever been like starstruck by anyone that you met, or like who was like the coolest person that you talked to?
Well, I had a crush on a certain well-known singer when I was 10 years old. And I didn't ever believe I could meet him or date him. I had actually an inferiority complex as a kid. I thought I was really ugly and stupid, and even all the way into my teens. And I ended up using gate crashing, which is really kind of the reason I got into it, was to meet him, and which was Tom Jones. You probably don't know who he is because he's too old for you, but
it's not unusual to be loved by anyone.
Good job.
Come on, we know.
So I was interested in him since I was 9 years old. And when I was almost 19, he asked me on my first date with him, and I dated him for 3 years. He was my first boyfriend, and my low self-esteem just zoomed right up. I mean, I was like, it was amazing dating my dream guy. And I was totally in love with him from the very beginning. I thought I was in love with him at age 10, but I knew I was at, almost 19 when I started seeing him. And I used the party crashing. I mean, that was the main reason I started, is because I needed to get to him. And I did the most outrageous stuff. Like, for example, he was in Vegas performing. This is before I went out with him. It was like a year and a half before, but I was trying, I started early. And I went he was at Caesar's Palace, and he was staying there. And I got a room there as well. And I gave the bellhop like $20 and said, I need to know what room he's staying in. I need to know what time he goes to the dressing room, and I need to know what path he takes to get there. And the guy told me. So I had this showgirl costume that I had made with sequins and these feathers. And I looked all, like totally like a showgirl, even though I'm only like 4'11" in height, right? So I just like casually start walking down the hall. I hear him in the distance one night, and I'm like walking slowly. And then I pass him, and then he stops and he starts talking to me and flirting with me. And, so I did really ridiculous stuff like that. Another night I tried to get back to the dressing room, and I found all these pathways behind there was like a little deli, in the hotel, and a coffee shop. And so I found all these pathways, and I was like, crawling and then going up this ladder and then through this thing, and I went to all this trouble, to try to get to this backstage door that I had seen earlier, that I knew where it was. And so I get to the door, I open the door, and then his security guard was standing right there and says, "You're not allowed back here." And she like kicked me out. But I spent a week, and I did get to have conversations with him that week, and I did meet his mother. And so I had some interaction. He never asked me out that trip, I came back to Atlanta, and actually I was only 17 at the time. I wasn't even 18 yet. And then a year and a half later, when I was in going to school in Florida, my best friend in the dorm lived down the street from Sunrise Musical Theater where he was performing. And so I started my concoctions all over again. And I called the theater where he was performing, and I talked to the manager, and I said that, Charlotte Laws, the winner of the Miss Georgia beauty pageant, that's a lie, was going to be in the area doing Maybelline commercials, and she needs a introduction to Mr. Jones backstage and a ringside seat at the show. And the guy says, no problem, yes ma'am. And so I got the ringside seat, but I didn't need the introduction because he saw me, he remembered me, he had somebody come out and get me, take me backstage. We had dinner, went to a discotheque, and that was it. And that was the beginning of the relationship. So it was totally a Cinderella story. It was like amazing for me. Totally amazing.
I'm blown away.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I love, like, when I think about one of the big issues that I think with women our age, I'm guessing we're probably right around your daughter's age, is the like imposter syndrome of this like millennial woman, like, and it sounds like that was something that you then had struggled with and then kind of overcame. Is there any advice you can offer on making that transition from like not having that confidence to just like, nope, I'm going to go out and make my own dreams come true and like get shit done?
Well, I mean, I do believe that persistence is the key to success. And I've kind of believed that for a long time. But it is funny because even when I was a child, I had this very low self-esteem. But when I look at my actions, it never seemed like I had low self-esteem. I was always just doing things that bucked the trend and, kind of did my own thing and was always pissing people off because of that. And, so I was kind of a rebel even as a kid. So it was kind of like, it didn't really seem to mesh because when I was writing my memoir, I thought it's so weird how my actions seem very sassy, and yet I had this very low self-esteem inside. So I don't really know how to advise on that, except that, everybody has got, is beautiful. Everybody has great things to offer, and just to try to be confident in yourself, maybe try to fake it till you make it, and be persistent.
I love that.
Hell yeah. I love that advice. Obviously, definitely we do want to talk a little bit about, the revenge porn industry and how this happened. Obviously, the listeners know that your daughter was a victim of Hunter Moore and his army of trolls. And how do you think, like, as a society, we got to that place where it became acceptable and wanted?
Well, I think, the internet just kind of opened up a new avenue for a lot of things. And, technology got very far ahead of the law, and people can be anonymous there, and they can come from all parts of the world and come together and, beef up the hatred and join together to be more malicious. And I think that, Hunter Moore kind of drew those people, and he ratcheted up himself by wanting people to ruin lives, suggesting that people commit suicide, wanting people to be terrorized, wanting his followers to contact victims' bosses or family, or send out their nude pictures to everyone they know. And it just became a place of hatred. And I don't really understand why Hunter Moore doesn't use his quote talent for good. I mean, he obviously had the opportunity, the ability to draw all these followers. So why not do something good with that? Why be Charles Manson instead of saying, wait, I have the ability to draw, people to me. So let's all put that to good use. But he believes that tearing other people down builds him up. And that is his mindset to this day. And he's still a misogynist, and he's never apologized for any of this. He feels like it's everyone else's fault except his. He blames the hacker. He blames his attorney. I'm sure he blames me.
My blood was boiling approximately 8 minutes into the documentary. I was like, I hate this. Like, this documentary is so aptly named. Like, I hate this man so much. But as I started to get further into the documentary, what scared me more was like, what scared me more was when Hunter talked about putting up Is Anyone Up To, where he was going to put
Oh yeah.
the past victims up, the
Mhm.
addresses, and
Mhm.
he said, this site is literally going to cause murders, LOL,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
And what scared me is how many people were not the one calling for that, but like, and maybe weren't the ones who were gonna go do it, but how many people wanted to see that happen?
Right.
Who would have just been cheering that on if those women had been terrorized, if they had been stalked or raped or murdered.
Mhm.
Like, and I don't know how he publicly threatened you and so many other people and only got less than 3 months in prison. It's absolutely infuriating. Do you have like
It was
any?
actually 30, I think it was 30 months, but he did spend less than 30. I think he got 30 months originally, but he did spend less than that. I'm not sure how long he was in there, but I think it was more than 3 months. But he was in 3 separate facilities. And I understand they were kind of more like camps, like drug and alcohol rehab centers. And that if he wanted to get something at the store, he got to walk up by himself, unsupervised, buy something, and then come back. That was kind of more the situation he was in. So he thought it was really bad, I believe. I mean, that's certainly what he says, but I don't think it was that bad compared to what a lot of criminals, deal with in a normal prison.
He was minorly inconvenienced for a little less than 3 years.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I know actual addicts who have been sent to prison or jail instead of a rehab facility when that was obviously so much more appropriate because
Mhm.
they're not criminals, they're obviously people dealing with addiction, and
Right.
that just becomes
Yeah, it was a shame that he got so little time, but it was a plea deal. And so he only he only had to plead guilty to a certain number, basically doing what he did to one victim. And he was able to dodge more time doing it that way. And, I feel like, unfortunately, I had been asked by the FBI earlier before the court dates. I had been asked to get together victims to testify. And so I had agreed to do that. And I had about 25 people willing to come to court, one after the other, who would testify. And I knew this would possibly be powerful because I was also in touch with Kamala Harris's office, who was the Attorney General for California at the time. And she had prosecuted a case in San Diego regarding another website by Kevin Bollard, another website owner. And he had gotten something like 18 years in prison. He got a pretty hefty term. And her office told me it's because we had these victims lined up to speak. So I had these people ready to go in, but they didn't want their identities to be known because there were all this media outside the courtroom. So I said, well, we got to hide your faces. And I said, I know we could just use anonymous masks. And so I bought all these masks for everybody to wear. And the prosecutor heard about that and she was very upset. She didn't want any victims coming into court unless she got them. And she said, I don't want you to get any victims together. I'm going to do it. And so I said, okay. And then I showed up at court and my daughter was the only one there to speak. And I had a letter from one other victim and that was it. So there was nobody to speak except Kayla. So I don't know if he would have gotten more time had other victims shown up, but it's a shame that that didn't happen.
I feel like you ran in left and right. You ran into people telling you like, no, we've got this covered. And then the amount that they had it covered was less than the amount that you were able to do, which I imagine had to be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. Well, the prosecutor's office was upset with me anyway, because they didn't want me doing any media. And so she said, this is only about justice for your daughter. And I said, no, it's about all these other victims. It's an issue. We've got to get legislation passed. And I have to talk to the media about all these issues. And so she didn't like that. So there was already like a tension because of that. And so, that was a shame.
Shirley, I have to wonder, like, not being a parent myself, but, thinking about what it must be like, what was the initial feeling when Kayla came to you and said, like, this is what's going on. And when you and Charles kind of first learned about what was happening, what was, I guess, going through your head as you're trying to process through that?
Well, I mean, when she first called me, Charles didn't know. My husband wasn't told for a while because she didn't want anyone to know. So she called me from her work where she was a waitress. And she said, something horrible happened, Mom. And my first thought was car accident. And then she told me about this website. And I'd never heard of revenge porn. And I was next to the computer. So I went on immediately and I saw her topless picture. And there were also a bunch of clothes pictures that the person had also stolen. And I just thought, oh my God, this has to come down immediately. This is a big deal. You know, and you have a topless picture online today, it's on one site, tomorrow it's on 5 sites, and in a month it's on 50 sites, and you're never going to get it down. The rest of your life, it's going to follow you, it's going to haunt you, and you're going to get fired from jobs, and it's going to ruin your life. So I just knew that it had to come down right away. And she was really distraught and in tears. And I could tell that she really couldn't do it herself, that she didn't have that ability because she was too, felt so violated. And she was blaming herself. The victim blaming from everybody was powerful, but even the victims were also blaming themselves just for taking the picture in the first place. So I just, I knew I had to get to work, so I just put everything on hold, all my work, everything, and I just devoted my time to trying to get this picture down and finding out who Hunter Moore was and investigating his website. And it ended up becoming a full-time job, and it ended up being all encompassing.
Gosh, that's such a testament to your relationship, though, that that she would come to you immediately. I feel like that's got to be so mortifying to have to be like, hey, here's this.
Yeah,
So
it's hard. I'm sure it was hard, telling me, because she was embarrassed by the whole thing. But, I was a single mom, so I raised her by myself, and she didn't meet her dad till she was 11. And then Charles came in her life when she was, I think, well, she was probably 8 or 9 or something. So it was, the two of us for many years. So I was her best friend.
We called you, pardon me, we called you Mom throughout the episode. And I wrote interview with Mom, and I hope you don't mind. Because just
okay.
Me and my listeners, you're just I think the mom that everybody deserves. You're just this
well, thank you.
super mom, and I want to give you such kudos for that. And we, how did this impact your family in the aftermath?
Oh, it was a mess.
Years after.
I mean, it was a mess during the period for sure. I mean, for 2 years, it was a mess because my husband was really angry and he didn't want me even doing any of this stuff. So he was upset about it. My daughter was completely withdrawn and kind of didn't want to even have any dealings with the world. And then I was completely obsessed with getting her picture down and then other people's pictures down, because I learned that Hunter Moore was so obsessed with his website and with Twitter that I had to be equally obsessed if I even wanted to have a chance. I didn't even know when he slept. I mean, honestly, it seemed like he was on there 24 hours a day, always posting, always interacting. And it was just, he was so into all of that. And so I just knew I had to really dig in. And I did have relationships, because when I started reaching out to other victims, I talked to them quite a bit. And there was one victim who was literally ended up being kind of my right-hand person. I mean, I talked to her 10, 15 times a day. She was doing research on her own. Even though she was a victim, she was very strong, and she was able to kind of do a lot of this, investigative work. And so the two of us kind of worked together a lot. She was not in the documentary because she didn't want to be in it. And so the producer and director didn't want to even mention her because she wasn't going to be there anyway. So, but she did a lot, and she was a huge help. And so I did have other support. It's not like I was by myself. I did have some of these victims who were calling me all the time, and I was reaching out to them. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like from the testimonials from a couple of the women in the documentary, you were kind of the only person they felt like they had who understood them and was supporting them in that really dark time.
Yeah, it was, there were a lot of victims. When I started reaching out, there were a lot who didn't know they were on the site until I told them. It was probably about 50% of the people I reached out to. And so they were hysterical. They were in tears. They were freaked out. And many of them didn't want to tell their families or their friends. And so I was the only person they could talk to, because better to talk to me, who is a stranger but has some experience with the issue, and that way they could keep it private from everyone else they knew. So I felt like a suicide hotline, frankly, talking to these people. It was so depressing, and I was in tears myself, and it was really hard making all these calls. And to date, I've talked to 500 victims, over 500 victims over the past 10 years. So it's been a real haul, really hard time, dealing with all these problems that people have.
But it's just incredibly powerful. What do you think people should focus on to kind of end this? Like, actually, pardon me. How mad are you that Hunter is on Twitter right now and there's still people like worshiping him? And B, how do you think we stop this kind of behavior?
Well, I mean, for the B question, I think a federal law is really important, and we've had a lot of trouble getting that passed. And there is something called the SHIELD Act that Jackie Spears has brought forward. And her office told me about a month ago that they don't think it's going to pass. There's only maybe a 4% chance that it could pass. And she's leaving office in November. She's retiring. And so it's unclear who would take it forward after that. And it's been a problem because we have the ACLU, who's been fighting us from the beginning. And now we also have certain members of the progressive side of the Democratic Party who are the defund the police people, who just simply don't want any more laws. And so they're against it from that perspective. So we have, groups who are just simply opposed to any sort of federal law on the issue. And the first question, I'm concerned because he's starting to build up followers again. I wasn't concerned until yesterday, because I looked at his Twitter and he was mostly getting criticized. But as of yesterday and today, he seems like he's starting to get people who are liking him again. And I was just told by my daughter that a victim just contacted her, and she's actually going to be contacting me, that he's on some other platform and trying to start doing a lot of this stuff all over again. So I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was literally told right before I came on the air with you. And I mean, I don't mind him being on Twitter if he's not doing anything but just speaking and just saying, hi, how are you doing? And, the kind of stuff that he's mostly been doing on there. I'm an advocate for free speech, if it's just verbal speech. But to me, revenge porn is not speech. I think it should be, I think it should be an exception to the First Amendment, just like child pornography and incitement and libel and et cetera, discrimination, et cetera. And, I think it's about, personal, private photos of regular people is not the same as public discourse or the marketplace of ideas. I think it's a completely different thing. And so I think it should be an exception.
Yeah, I've gotten kind of obsessed with this case, as you know, because I've been communicating with you through Twitter a lot, because this man and his followers just anger me so much. And I noticed that he recently tweeted, "Is anyone up?"
No, I know. He's like he's a dinosaur. He's back in 2012. He thinks it's all the same time. He forgot the Me Too movement has happened, and things are not the same as they were back then.
But it scared me how many people, because I've been following as well, and like there are threads where he says like, "What's up?" and everybody's like, "You fucking suck," and I'm like, "Yeah." And then they're like, when he said, "Is anyone up?" it was a lot of positive comments, like, "I am." Some girl said, "I am, daddy, love you." And I said, "Who hurt you?" And she said, "No one." And then I ended that conversation. I was like, "Ashley, stop fighting with trolls on the internet, because they love that." So how do you think we fight trolls on the internet without engaging with them? Do we just
I started something called Tribs Over Trolls, and it's like tributes are compliments, or tribs. And so the idea is that when you see somebody being bullied or harassed, you actually just come to their defense. And if you could get society to verbally come to people's defense, people, trolls will go away. They don't like to feel like, oh man, my voice is getting drowned out by all these people who are supporting the victim. They'll just go away. So I would like to see people just voluntarily start doing that. I think that would be the best way to solve the problem.
I'm sorry, Charlotte. I'm dying right now because literally my business partner and I were just discussing like if we could make like an anti-troll Reddit or something where like every time somebody sees somebody being trolled, they post it in the group, and then for every compliment that's like every comment that's like this girl's stupid, 5 people go in and be like, you're beautiful, you have lovely hair.
Exactly.
So maybe you and James and I don't know, like maybe we could get together because I'm so on board. I love your tribs
over trolls. Yeah, I made a Twitter page years ago called I think it's @TributeUSA is what it's called. It's the Tribs Over Trolls Twitter page. So you'll see that, on Twitter if you look. But yeah, so that is something I've been promoting a long time, but it hasn't really caught on. But yeah, if you can get it to catch on, that would be great.
Well, I'll try. We're going to reach out to James. He seems like he's got some hookups. It never hurts, right? Here we are talking to you.
Right.
I know we have to let you go. It's definitely longer than we normally would go, but it's just been such a fascinating discussion with you. Pardon me. Could you tell our listeners about what you're doing today, how they can follow the awesome things you're taking on, and where they can find your books and everything like that?
Well, my Twitter is @CharlotteLaws, just like my name. And then I have 2 memoirs, and one of them, one is called Rebel in High Heels, and the other is Undercover Debutante. And they cover different periods of my life. So the Rebel in High Heels has the revenge porn fight in it in more detail than the doc has. And it also has the first 21 years of my life, including dating Tom Jones. There's a lot of party crashing stuff and my family life as a child, all that stuff. And then Undercover Debutante starts at about age 21, and it covers my search for my birth family, trying to find a husband, more party crashing, some of the crazy stuff I do in Los Angeles. It's a very humorous book, actually. And so there's, those are the 2 memoirs that I currently have. And I do talk to victims. I do what I can to help on this issue. And I also am working on a book, which is on animal advocacy, because I don't support a democracy. So I support an omniocracy, which is a government with representation for all living beings, so that we embrace and care about all living beings, not just humans. It's not of, by, and for people. It's of, by, and for all living beings. And I promote the idea of changing our political system to that and having standing in court for animals, etc. So I'm working on that. And I also wrote a screenplay on the same topic, a very mainstream scripted screenplay. So those are kind of my most recent projects.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Do you sleep?
I know, you're like, I don't know when Hunter sleeps. Like, whoa, what are you, Charlotte? When do you sleep?
I definitely sleep.
All right. And do you have a website where people can kind of find all of?
Sure. I mean, charlottelaws.com. I have like probably 10 or 15 websites, but my books also have their own websites. So undercoverdebutante.com and rebelinhighheels.com. But you can also just go to charlottelaws.com, which is kind of the main one. My articles are on, I think, charlottelaws.org. There's a bunch of pictures of me with like celebrities and various people. I think it's charlottelaws.net, and also pictures of me with my daughter and my husband, and just a bunch of photos on that site. So I've got a lot of websites.
Yeah, God, I have one. I have trouble just keeping up with one.
Like your SEO must be amazing. Someone just searches Charlotte Laws. It's just
No, I don't get any money from any of this stuff. I mean, oh, you're talking about just getting it
yeah, just
out.
like that you've just taken over the internet, like Charlotte
No,
Laws, and they're
I don't think they're
everything.
very popular websites, so I think nobody ever goes on them, but they are there.
Hey, we'll all start going on them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go charlottelaws.net.
Charlotte, you are an icon. Like
Well, thank you.
this has
Oh,
just been so honestly just so
truly.
inspiring and like just such a delightful conversation.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. So listeners, go check out her stuff. Rewind, write it down, because it's so much, because you are just a true badass, and we know that you are in high demand right now, and we so appreciate and feel so honored that you've taken the time to talk to us.
Well, thanks for having me.
You. And remember, listeners,
It's not a cult, it's just a podcast.
but remember, Charlotte Laws, aka Mom, is an absolute fucking icon. That's a pretty good end.